So, Erik, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure. Calling in from Chicago. So you mentioned, my name's Erik. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tetro, which is building the data asset that is needed to recapture that 60% that you alluded to in the opening.
And that's the 60% that's wasted in trucking. What is it? What's the 60% waste?
So that 60% really is the time that could be used productively, but ultimately isn't. Whether that is referring to even just a driver's clock, or it's across the entire system. So it's not just driver dependent. So it's really 60% of potentially productive time that experiences leakage.
Yep. Erik, you probably have seen all this stuff on LinkedIn that I have. And for a long time, since I got into this business, there has been a driver shortage. And everyone says, there's a driver shortage. We need more drivers. And when you say that you need more drivers, can we train someone in six months? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a good paying job that you can attract people to? Yeah. Well, then why do we have any sort of issue? Now, it'd be different if you said we are struggling to hire NASA astronauts because the education is years and years, or a brain surgeon, years and years. But what happens in trucking is we tend to get people and then they leave the business. And I think only in the last year or so, maybe 2 years, I started seeing Craig Fuller said it's not a driver shortage, it's a utilization problem. And you and I shouldn't say many others, you and some others are saying, yes, we have a huge utilization problem for our drivers. Please elaborate.
Yeah, so on the first point about driver shortage, I fundamentally agree. I do not believe that there's a driver shortage. In fact, I don't think that we have had one. I think that all of the challenges that anybody cite can be addressed very, very cleanly, and I don't want to say easily, but in a non-complicated manner, certainly. But yeah, I mean, you can. It's not a tall challenge to tease out from even public company financials how drivers are only productive for 4.5 hours out of their 11 that they can drive from the federally regulated hours of service limitation. So that's not a shortage.
So what are they doing with that other time?
It's a great question. And the thing is, it's not so much of what the drivers do. I mean, the drivers are doing what they're instructed to do. So they're getting to facilities, they're waiting. In some scenarios, they're not even allowed on site. So they go and they stop by the local terminal, whatever it might be. But what ultimately comes down to it is that it is a misalignment between demand and capacity and supply. And that's what drives that. And it ultimately, specifically, that nobody knows how long anything takes.
Yeah, and we'll get more into this in a minute. But before we hit the record button, you said we kind of even gave up on it. Just said, hey, the world of trucking, the loading, the unloading, driving across the country is so unpredictable that we're not even going to try. And now, by the way, there are dock scheduling systems, and there's a lot of good trucking companies that say we want to minimize the time wasted too. But I think what you're talking about, you and the Tetro folks are talking about a paradigm shift in the industry, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah, certainly. And that paradigm shift, if you want to pull on that thread for just a moment, it really goes back to the fact that miles is an inherited framework from the Industrial Revolution, when compensation by piecework was the most common method of evaluating productivity, compensating people. And trucking simply has just never evolved. And as a result, has never gone through the process of quantifying time and measuring how long each event takes. And so, yeah, I in fact don't know of a single company that says that they want to waste more time. In fact, everybody I've ever spoken to would love to get it back. But the reality is that they don't have the tools.
Erik, I saw a video, and it was on YouTube, and it was talking about the trucking business and all the different places you can be as a trucker. So you could work for Walmart, you could work for one of the large carriers, but there's also a lot of owner operators that we rely on. And during COVID, there was a lot of these drivers that were trying to pick up in Long Beach or LA. And these drivers would sit for 6 hours, 7 hours to get loaded and then never get loaded and go home at the end of the day. And they're in business. So you go home and your spouse says, "How'd you do today?" You say, "I made $0. I got up, I drove my truck, I sat in it all day idling, or it's probably not turned off or whatever. I sat all day and I made zero money." And she's like, "Well, I've been reading that all the trucking companies are getting rich." You're like, "Yeah, today I made nothing." Incredibly unfair. And by the way, a lot of those guys are not compensated very well. And they're business owners. That's the thing. When you bought your own truck, the expectation is, I'm going to go get my piece of the American dream. And instead, your time is wasted. And it's almost like these are the rules of the game. You don't get to change the game. You can switch and go to somewhere else, but these are the rules. You get paid by miles.
Yeah. And so I think actually to that point, and by the way, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. I mean, I think that is really a lot of what AB5 was intending to go after in California. Successful or not, that's at least a lot of what his intent was for the trucking industry, at least. But I think that to the point around these things could be changed, and it goes back to what you'd mentioned a moment ago. The industry just broadly, you talk to anybody, and everybody's approach has always been, well, you don't really know how long things are going to take, so we can't plan like that. We can't manage our capacity such that it's perfectly stacked and there's no downtime ever. And that's reality is that what our data has shown is that this simply isn't true.